Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody to this month in GSA Startups, German, Swiss and Austrian startups for May 2022. Chris is already here on the line. We are talking news May 2022. Chris is again in New York and I'm here in Frankfurt. This recording is sponsored by Invest in Hessen and Startuprad.io. It is in radio syndication with our very own station, Startup.radio, and our partner, IBJR.network. We recorded this news episode on Thursday, May 19th, 2022. The next show will go live on June 30th. Keep in mind, we will have a summer break and be back for you with another news episode on Labor Day for the non-Americans. This is September 5th, 2022. In this episode, we will wrap up July and August since our September news tended to be quite long, covering 3 months. As always, all news not yet included here will be published in our next news episode in June. Sorry that will be a little bit longer, but Chris and I have to travel. We will also slightly change our publication schedule in summer. As we have done before for July and August, we'll only post a new episode every other week. July 14th, 28th, August 11th and 25th. We will be back to normal with the start of September and our Labor Day news. And we are partnering with Arctic 15. You can get a discount with our code in the show notes at medium.com/startuprate-io. Christian, I totally forget to say hello because it's our second attempt of recording. Chris, my man, how you doing? I'm so sorry.
I'm doing great, and you also already missed the New York siren. But apart from that, I'm doing great. Spring is treating us well here in New York. COVID is picking back up, but no one's caring about it anymore. And apart from that, everything is good.
Feels like the same here in Germany. We can proudly, our highlights. We can proudly announce unicorn number 29, TaxFix, number 30, OneFootball, and on the downside, Raising the S loses its unicorn valuation. Really bad news for car sharing. BMW and Mercedes pulled the plug on their joint venture for car sharing. Our 2018 guest Pro Glove is sold in a 500 million euros deal, which is 525 million US dollars, and Autobird is sold in a 100 million euro, 105 million US dollar transaction. Other unicorns are currently on the hunt for new capital and feel the heat of the current funding environment. So let's talk startups. Our enablers, Invest in Hessen. This show was made possible by Hessen Trade and Invest with the brand Invest in Hessen. You can learn more about them here, invest-in-hessen.com. We also run a dedicated sub-podcast with all interviews and news in cooperation with them. Find more at techstartups.sounder.fm and of course, startupraven.com, the best way to identify investors and cooperation partners for early stage startups. Sign up for early access here, startupraven.com. And little hint, don't be too late. There are already 4,500 startups signed up. Christian, you got some top news for us?
Yes. So when it comes to the top news, in April, we were just announcing or talking about 2 new unicorns in Germany. And depending on how you calculate, there are now already new ones. One is the tax app TaxFix. They became a unicorn with a 220 million US dollar founding round. They would be number 29 in the German market in terms of unicorns, being defined as companies with a valuation of more than $1 billion US dollars.
That's the announcement.
Yeah. In general, in Texas may be boring, but they are important. So TaxFix becomes yet another unicorn, but the first one in Germany dealing with tax filings. So that's just another article we have in our show notes if you want to know more about TaxFix. In general, since here in the US it's such a big market, the companies that try to help you with your taxes, etc. The German system is a bit different, but yet it's complicated and people definitely are in need of help.
I think it would be fair to say the tax system in Germany is complicated and in the US is complicated just in another way.
Yeah, definitely. And in Germany, the government calculates your taxes, whereas here in the US, you kind of have to declare your taxes. It's a bit different. Anyway, we also have number 30 on the unicorn list. It's called One Football. It's Berlin-based. They have a fundraising, or they found a founding round of $300 million US. And they are having a football app, and are hoping to make money. They got a lot of money from Liberty City Ventures. That's a fund from New York here, and their goal is to have a one-stop shop app for soccer friends, where they can get live events, where they can get reports about the games, about transfers, and all like the current standings, etc. So we will see how that goes. Definitely, obviously, a big market in Germany. And then, since I just said we have the 30th startup, we have to deduct one, because we're back at 29 due to Raisin DS. Germany has lost the unicorn, not due to insolvency or takeover, but to a down round, a founding round, where the valuation of the overall startup went down. And that is, in this case, the Berlin-based fintech Raisin. And they devalued their company because of slowing growth. But we think this maybe just hurt their feelings for now. But we also hope that, or wish them that they can bounce back anytime. And then, technically it's not really startup news, but definitely startup adjacent, since the German automotive industry is so big. The big players there are looking for new ways of revenue, or for also of ways to fight Tesla, which looms large. And so it was quite a surprise when BMW and Daimler announced that they would join forces for a car sharing company. In 2018, they did so and started a joint car sharing company, but now ShareNow is being sold, or was being sold, to Stellantis. And the question in Germany is, can anybody make car sharing profitable if the two biggest players in the market cannot really? But also in general, it's really interesting what happens at Daimler right now, because they kind of split up the company. And so the trucks division is now independently traded on the stock market. Just today, there was an announcement that the car division would maybe stop manufacturing 2 or 3 of their entry-level models. People believe it might be the A-class or B-class that actually won't be produced anymore. So it's really, there's a lot going on at Mercedes and BMW as well. And in general, the question obviously is, where does the whole mobility sector go? And so we will see how that goes. Moving on, ProGlove sold for 500 million euros, and it's looking to be the next TeamViewer. We had them as a guest on our show, or in our network in 2018, but they made a monster exit at around 500 million euros and still plan, as I said, to be the next TeamViewer. It's a company from Munich. They were acquired by Nordic Capital. Orderbird is part of a 100 million euros deal. It's a hospitality startup. They were completely sold to new Italian owners, made 100 million euros with that. And according to a recent press report, the current fundraising of Trade Republic, N26, and Gorillas is not going as planned. There's a fear of flat rounds without a higher valuation. So it's a bit of like dark clouds over the German startup market in general right now. And the question is whether the market develops in a more sunny way in the future anytime soon. Right now, it looks as if some of the biggest names in Germany have problem to find new money. Those are the top stories. Back to you and housekeeping.
Housekeeping, exactly. And time to brag. You may have noticed our partnership with DeepTech Ecosystems. They are an analytics company tracking the startup activity in more than 120 cities across Europe. Little disclaimer here, they are also using for Frankfurt and the Rhine-Main area the data I collect as Rhine-Main VC or Startup.io collects. Normally, you need to be a member to get your hands on the data. Now you can get quarterly updates exclusively with us. We call it the Pulse of the European Startup Ecosystem, and it will also be available as a new sub-podcast. The release of the next update and the sub-podcast will be in calendar week 27, which starts on June 6th here in Germany, which is also a public holiday. You would call it a bank holiday abroad.
And if you're ever doubting that we're a German podcast, you can tell by us using words like in calendar week 27. I don't think any other nation does that.
Actually, it's something I have seen in the US as well, but mostly it is done by people in project management. So when you talk to a former consultant, maybe from the US, maybe in Germany, they sometimes start to think in calendar weeks like I do with my big calendar on the wall. I still have a paper-based calendar here to my right. And that helps me with the planning because I always did it. I learned it that way for more than a decade. Ecosystem. After Red Hot 2021, global venture investment cools in Q1 2022, even as the global unicorn club reaches a new height, is one of the articles. There's also funding to EU startups slows sharply after brisk start in 2022 on Crunchbase. This is a bit at odds with our data from DeepTech Ecosystem, but we will discuss it during their podcast recording. Also, have a look at our DeepTech Ecosystem episode coming out on June 7th. Berlin-based and Berlin city. So in Germany, there are 3 city-states, Berlin, Hamburg, and Bremen. So where the city is also a state, something like Washington, D.C. is something similar to a state, but as opposed to D.C., they have full rights. I know D.C. doesn't send any senators. They are in the German equivalent of the Senate. Going back, Berlin-based and Berlin City-owned IBB Ventures invested in 2021 15 million euros in Berlin-based startups, creating with that additional 75 million euros in private investments. Demand for electric cars coming back to the mobility by Germans on vacation or business trips is pretty low. According to a car rental platform from Germany, their electrically powered car bookings make up only 0.22% of their overall booking volume, which is quite low. I would have expected at least people to try out new electric cars when they can rent them. Going to our hubs section. Here, there are many deserving startup cities and entrepreneurs who will never get any English coverage. That's why this section exists. Chris is again channeling his inner geography teacher and has his own order. But we'll first start out with Frankfurt, my home turf. Germany's banking giant Commerzbank has submitted applications for a crypto license and going on competition with a lot of other crypto startups. And it also appears that's a sign that crypto is going more and more mainstream here in Germany. Frankfurt-based AI startup Redo passes after Germany's version of Shark Tank on an investment of billionaire and Shark Tank judge Carsten Maschmeyer. You can learn more on the founders and Redo, the Spotify for books, in our interview there. And startups in larger Rhine-Main area raised more than 300 million euros in 2021 via Rhine-Main VC. Background to this very low number is that there was one big IPO of Volocopter cancelled. But with the funding round of this and hydrogen, we're way beyond that. There will be another publication coming up in September. And this is also data used by the Deep ecosystem. Now back to our geography teacher, Christian.
We move to the north. So in Hamburg, big city, we've oftentimes already talked about driverless cars and also the opportunities that the new German law allows for remotely driven cars. In Hamburg, we now have news from a startup called Vai. They want to start with them still in 2022 in Hamburg-Bergedorf. But it's really actually like a complicated issue, obviously, because technically they are driverless physically, but someone drives them remotely. And then also the question is, they are not doing anything against like individual mobility. So basically it's still a car on the road. Nevertheless,
but we discussed this in the interview, and we're talking to a lawyer about the framework. We discussed this in the interview, and it's not yet sure if the text of the law says that there's one driver who can drive like 5 cars at the same time, and every time there's an alert, he takes over, and other times they're driving autonomous, or if there has to be a one-on-one relation.
I mean, in general, it's such an interesting market space because Tesla and Elon Musk, they were so keen on it, and he kind of overpromised the whole thing, and it's not nowhere as near as where they wanted it to be, I think, in 2022, and considering how optimistic they were. Then there's the Dutch RV rental startup Camp Space. They bought a Hamburg-based competitor, Pop-Up Camps. And we have news from Hamburg from a company called Rabot Charge, Rabot, R-A-B-O-T, a startup that allows charging electrical cars at the best time with the lowest possible price. I guess it's one of the like bigger issues when it comes to electrical cars. And the smarter the grid gets, the more there will be opportunities like this in terms of why not charge in the middle of the night and so save some money. And Rabot Charge raised more than 1 million euros in a pre-seed funding round. Moving on to Munich, there we see that the private equity fund Thomas H. Lee Partners, BMW I Ventures, and the Telecom Innovation Pool invested $130 million in the Munich-based startup Kinexon. Kinexon is a company that is doing cloud software in combination with connected devices, and in order to help companies in production logistics and sports. So quite a range. Then there's the US-based investor Coatue, C-O-A-T-U-E.
Chris, on purpose, I gave you all the complicated names.
Honestly, people come up with better names, like name your company like the normal company or something like this, so we can get through this. Entrepreneur Lip Pu Tan and existing investors invest $30 million in the Munich-based Twice, which is Twaice, a company that offers software to analyze batteries. 200 founders and 48 business angels join forces to raise 160 million euros for a venture capital fund 10 times, headquartered in Munich for early stage investments. So there's opportunity going on there. And 202 million euros is the final closing for Scipio Partners Fund 8. Said Munich startup has more about that. Early Bird VC closes 350 million euro fund for Western European startups. More about that. That even made the news on TechCrunch. And the Munich-based Rencor raised 3.75 million euros in a Series A funding for their offering in the cloud collaboration governance market. And the state of Bavaria invested 2 million euros in TUM Venture Labs, writes Munich startup, and TUM is the Technical University of Munich. Dresden. In Dresden, we see that there's an exit for the Dresden-based Hyperscan. It's a spin-off of Fraunhofer Institute, so one of the biggest science institutes in Germany, to pharma company Fagron. There's a lot of like gay adjacent news today, like Fagron, Camp Space. It's all a bit weird going on. Anyway, Cologne-based AI startup Automated, made MAITED, raised 4 million euros venture capital for its automation of copy and paste jobs. I can use that. In Landshut in Bavaria, we have Molten Ventures, Mubadala Capital, and existing investors Early Bird Venture Capital, Zenovo, and New Forge. 40 million euros in Hive MQ. That's the startup from Landshut, Germany, and they try to help to connect Internet of Things devices to the cloud. And then we have news from Austria and Switzerland. In Austria, we see that early Bitpanda investor Speed Invest, they defy tech jitters with a new seed fund. German neo-broker Scalable Capital enters the Austrian market with a large portfolio of tradable assets, including cryptos, and therefore directly attacking Bitpanda on their home turf. So there's trouble in paradise going on there. Neo, N-E-O-H, an Austrian household name for chocolate bars. Also a scale-up rises 1 million euros in revenue-based financing from Towers Capital, and Storyblock, an an Linz-based software scale-up, Storyblock, B-L-O-K, so no C-K, they raised 43 million euros for their headless content management system. In Switzerland, we have news from the medtech startup Bionter, also Bionter, B-I-O-N, TER. They secured a $3 million seed financing, and the leading domestic provider of co-working spaces in Switzerland, Westhive. You see, Westhive, that's a good name. I immediately get it. They raised 6 million Swiss francs in venture capital. Good luck to them, just because of the name. And social freezing and family planning are now becoming more and more startup topics. Oviavo, that's a social freezing startup. They pivoted and raised 4 million euros in venture capital. And April Bags, April A-P-R-Y-L, not as the month. The April Bags their name is not April Bags. Their name is just April. I'm sorry. April bagged 4.1 million euros to bring pioneering fertility benefits platform to the workplace. Oh my God, I stumbled through this month. Let's talk about fintechs and see how you're going to do.
Don't worry, Christian. I totally do believe a lot of people don't think about how their company names come across in different languages, if they may be offensive. And some of the words you refer to, you only understand if you understand American slang. They will never, fortunately, they will never be in a proper dictionary, even though if you have a problem like this, look it up in the Urban Dictionary. I found it sometimes pretty helpful. As Christian said, I'm talking fintechs here. Former factoring startup Finiata is bought by Polish shareholders Manta Ray Ventures. Finiata started out as a factoring startup, but increasingly turned itself into a credit provider in Poland for SMEs, reports Deutsche Startups exclusively. A little hint here. Have a look at our interview with Billy.io. They are also pivoting to be a buy now, pay later startup. Originally also started in factoring. It seems factoring is not the place to be for fintechs right now. PE firm Moonfair picks Singapore over Hong Kong as Asia hub. You remember Moonfair is a Berlin-based startup started by the former German head of KKR, which is a very well-known private equity fund in the US. Also headquartered in New York, I do believe. Maybe the last news on Zoo Plus for some time. Zoo Plus, an online pet supply store, has been taken private in a ferocious battle of private equity houses. We talked about it a lot in our news. Now, after the buyout, the founder leaves the company. In another news, they had to publish their 2021 numbers before they went private, and they saw headline growth of 16% to 2.09 billion euros. Totally not the last news of Wirecard. A German court ruled 2017 and 2018 balance sheet annual accounts of Wirecard are null and void. So the liquidator, the person in charge of this Wirecard mess, can demand the payback of the year's dividends. I do believe that will start quite a long and stretched out legal battle. A very, very, very few and very, very, very selected VC fundings. Because with Chris, I had to throw out almost 50 of them just to get to a manageable size. Bertelsmann, which is already shareholder of the app economy builder Apply Group, in which it invests additional 100 million euro to develop digital business models. PropTech Gropus, GROPYUS, raises additional 40 million euros to keep developing smart and sustainable solutions for living. DeepTech raises 14 million US dollars to help companies build NLP, natural language processing apps. By the way, DeepTech, that's the name again. Noteworthy for other reasons than the total investment. German football player Mario Gomez invests in a food startup of former cook of Germany's national football team, Organic Garden, producing in a circular economy approach clean meat and vegetables. Chris, you got some other news, right?
Yes, I got some other news. Also, hurrying through it. Reportedly, the Lieferando co-founder and Takeaway COO Jörg Gerbig is on leave, while an internal investigation of potential misconduct is investigated by a law firm. We saw news that the fast delivery startup Flink buys the French competitor Cajoo and wins a new partner with Carrefour, so one of the biggest French supermarket chains. Art Night offers created yourself events and now raised new funding. It seems investors are going for offline events again here. The Amazon aggregator Razor Group is set to acquire rival Factory 14 in a multi-million-dollar deal as European market shows signs of consolidation. Probably you know of Bastian Lehmann, one of the founders of Postmates, which exited to Uber. Now he is starting a new venture in fintech. Then there's news about quite a known figure in German circles. One serial entrepreneur and influencer. His name is Finn Kliman, and legal pressure on him rises or increases because there are discussions whether he made false statements about where his corona mask that he sourced came from. And he's really one of the guys who's a singer-songwriter who runs a little village, who then got into the mask business. And it's quite a big story in Germany. So, Finn Kliman, that is the reports about him. Berlin and Brussels-based startup Accountable has banked a total of 10 million euros for its tax app. Quick commerce seems to be no longer an easy way to make a fast buck, asks Forbes, and covers, amongst others, Delivery Hero and Gorillas. We've been talking about this quite a lot too, but you got a deep dive in that in our show notes. And Instafreight had to publish 2020 numbers. Their revenue grew by 69% to 32.1 million euros. The losses increased slightly from 5.1 to 7.2. So losses increasing slower than the revenue. And then to stay ahead of the curve, how's that unicorn valuation working out for your employees? A surprising story in 3 acts on Battery Ventures. Then there's the question of if there's a Minsky moment for venture capital. Could the unicorns of 2021 be the zombies of 2022? That's a German article. Sequoia Capital, a partner, shares the types of startups he's eyeing as the VC firms expands into Europe. And a flotilla of startup wants to streamline global supply chains, writes The Economist. We will be back on June 30th with the next news. And that is it from me. How about you?
That is it from me as well. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.